On this episode, we talk with my guest about how he ended up attending more than 200 days of leadership seminars. My guest is Caleb, who made this decision in response to what life was asking of him at the time. See, growing up on a horse farm in Dayton, Ohio, he had dreams of going to college. But those plans were derailed when his father was injured and he needed to step in to support the family. So instead of going to college, he began his journey of attending 226 days of in-person leadership conferences, balancing them with his responsibilities of the family. Once those obligations were fulfilled, he pursued his dream he had had since childhood, working in sales. He came to believe that when you make people laugh and they feel good, they're more open to receiving your message. We also talk about cults and how if you attend enough seminars, you're bound to run into one. Roughly 1 in every 100 to be exact. Let's jump in.
My girlfriend says I'm too loud.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a universal thing. That's not just you.
All men are
you
too
feel
loud?
special, but your significant other telling you you're too loud. That's it. That's an everybody thing.
That's fine. Put that through that door.
That's fine.
Hey, so I pick a shoe for every podcast.
Okay.
And not that you're a sneakerhead, but this is a Kobe Bryant shoe.
Okay.
But the name of this shoe, the colorway of this shoe is Girl Dad.
Oh, nice.
So I thought since we both,
We're having little girls.
How you
man.
feeling about that?
I'm stoked about it. Yeah, I definitely. I was more relieved to find out I was having a girl. I think a lot of people are like stressed later in life, but at least for that first decade, I just feel so much more excited about having a girl.
Say more? What do you mean?
I was just a pretty wild, like rebellious little kid. I was setting fires on stuff, sliding down the roof of the barn and just like stopping myself before I fell off the edge, doing dumb stuff, no sense of consequences or how bad you could get hurt. So I just anticipate that I'm going to come home after a day of work and say, "How you doing, honey?" And she's like, "Great." And I'm like, "What'd you do today?" She's like, "Colored." Nice. No fire, huh? No fire, no broken bones. You just colored. Excellent. I can't wait. Let's find a spot on the fridge. So yeah, just I think that's probably the most exciting. And my wife is very much a strong feminine energy, and I'm excited for her to have like that extra buddy around. We've been married 5 years, but I also knew even before we got married, like, oh, she's going to be right in her batter's box as a mom. So I'm excited to have that stage of the relationship. She was an au pair for a couple of years before we started dating.
Oh, really?
So it's like, oh, you've been preparing for being a mom. She had these skill sets. We knew we both wanted to take that 5 years of just like going and traveling and having fun, getting established where we wanted to be. I was up in Columbus, Ohio, so this is a world away from that, and we're definitely glad we made the move, got established, and then now we're starting the family here. So
Yeah, y'all did it the right way. I did not.
oh, there's no.
I got an
reason to do it the
ex-girlfriend
right
pregnant
way.
and moved her into my house.
Yeah, no reason to do it the right way. Don't you like chaos in your life?
But it really hasn't. It hasn't. We talked about it. Like it wasn't like something like. I think sometimes people think it was an accident because of maybe the scenario I'm in, but it wasn't an accident. We definitely talked about it, and it was one of those things where both of us were older. We trusted each other. It kind of sounds like we're like an old gay couple, but we've
been doing this forever.
But we trusted each other, and and I was like, if we don't work out, could we work this out? And I was like, I think we can.
Yeah.
That was it. I mean, you know what I mean? And so then we're like, oh, no way we're going to, no. She was older. No way I'm going to get pregnant. And it was like almost immediate.
Yeah. That's fun. Yeah, it's I think it definitely made me feel really appreciative and calm as I talked to other comics throughout Austin that were like, "Oh man, I'd love to have kids." And I could just see that that was like a real desire, and that just from their energy didn't seem like something they saw on the horizon. And I was like, "Oh yeah, dude, you're getting to do something that like is awesome." And I think initially I felt the fear of you're on the roller coaster. It's already started and there's no, it's here you go. It's coming. There's a T-minus countdown. And that lasted maybe like a week. I knew about a week before my wife. So I had a week to just kind of like pray about it and have my calm. And then maybe like 2 weeks in, it's been nothing but excitement the whole rest of the time.
Yeah.
So,
It really, it was a really great time. My girlfriend had a really bad pregnancy. She had the baby had to go to the NICU and she had to have
all
an
sorts of
emergency
stuff,
C-section,
yeah.
right? But I mean, other than that, it's been nothing short of fantastic. But I think also it's something we both wanted to do. And it sounds like that's the same thing for you. You both want to do it. This is not a surprise, not an accident. It's planned, blah, 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 whatever. You prepared. And so, like, those are the best, right?
Yeah, it was we kept saying for 5 years we wanted to date for 5 years and then have a baby, and we got pregnant the week of our 5-year wedding anniversary. So it wasn't like planned specifically, but we had just been saying it over and over. And sometimes those blessings will show up right when you ask for them.
Well, before we started, you kind of said something. I think, because we're talking about this exact same subject. You're like, if you keep asking the universe, it's gonna happen. Is that like something that's like you really believe in? Like, is that something you kind of are you a manifester?
I mean, I guess you can call it that. My wife's a yoga instructor, so I err towards like the least crunchy terms that you could use. But yeah, I would say like if you're somebody, I don't know, if you have a focus and you write it down every day and you're really all about it, you're gonna find a way to make that happen in your life. I had a belief system since pretty early on. I would say like maybe like 19, 20, something like that, of like, hey, if you're willing to give your whole life to something, you can accomplish it. And if you're not willing to give your whole life to it, don't let it preoccupy you all the time because you're not willing to put in the work that it would take to really have things the way you want.
Yeah, it's like dreaming of being a rock star.
Yeah, I would do whatever it would take to play the piano like you. No, you wouldn't.
Because you do it.
If you did, there's two things you wouldn't give: the necessary time and discipline the necessary discipline it takes to get that high level, and then the necessary time to put that discipline in. And if you would put those two things in, you could have anything you want. And I think that snapped for me like pretty early on in my 20s of like, hey, there's a lot of people saying they want a lot of things, and there's a lot of people, really angry at the world. And that's suffering's a choice. You don't have to go through your whole life suffering all the time. We're all going to get
Well, you can choose the way you suffer.
Yeah, we're going to get a dealing of like bad hands, and that's going to happen. And like, there's hardships coming your way, but you don't have to like suffer through it. So that was something that I guess resonated really early on. So I would say, yeah, I'm a guy that if you write it down, you really focus on it, put your appreciation and your gratitude there for it, like it'll show up. It's out there. You're just, if you look specifically for it, you'll find it.
So you didn't go to college, and you decided to spend that time going to leadership conferences. Is this correct?
Yeah.
And you spent 200 something hours, you said?
No, days worth.
Oh.
So I had like a really unique upbringing. My dad was a home builder. I grew up on a little horse farm outside of Dayton, Ohio. And he was a plumber just like his dad, started building houses when I was little and was kind of grooming me. He was that baby boomer that wanted his son to take over his construction company. So I just grew up going to work with my dad since I was little. And he was like pretty severely dyslexic, so couldn't read or write. And my mom would do all the translating. So since I was the firstborn, I started going to home closings and all the meetings since I was like since I was a baby. So like my first memory of like coming online was being in a closing and just being like, oh, that's just a bunch of adults sitting around talking and signing paperwork. That's what I want to do when I grow up. Like, I want to go into sales. And I've never met another kid that wanted to be a salesman, but I knew like very early on that was what I wanted to do.
How did you know? What was about it?
It was just, I think like everybody has one parent whose love they crave the most, and it was my dad for me. And I think I saw the energy he put towards, if you're willing to, work really, really, really hard, good things will happen to you. But ultimately, when it came down to it, his ability to talk and communicate overcame all of those drawbacks that he was fighting against. So it was just, oh, that must be a good skill set to have, because this is something that he feels like he's struggling with. To me, he's my dad. He couldn't do anything wrong. He's just Superman. And well, he's a salesman. I want to go do that too. And then we started doing like the little sales contest in kindergarten. There was little coupon books, and I just figured out how many I needed to win and just asked my mom, like, will you pre-buy them so I can just pass them out immediately instead of having to collect orders and come back. And won that contest, and it was like, all right, I'm hooked.
What made you think of to tell your mom to pre-buy them?
Just because I like playing a game the other team doesn't know is going on. So I knew I'm up against a bunch of kindergartners who are going to go out and ask 5 people, will they support them? And 5 people will say yes. So I'm constantly riding around with my parents because there's no babysitter. So I'm going to I'm going to PK Lumber and to this place and this place. And if I have my bag and I come up and I say, hey, this is $20, will you support my thing? A lot of people will say, yeah, but it's not in the budget to return. I don't have a car. Right. I need to be able to deliver this right away. And my mom thought the same way, because she also told me, hey, you can't sell anything else that the school's selling. Like no pies because we don't have freezer space. Like she knew I was going to go for the win. And it started there. I had a little rubber boat franchise when I was like 11 or 12.
What is that?
So it's called a rubber Zodiac. The company was called Sea Eagle out of Long Island, New York. And I got on dial-up internet and found them. And my dad was like, I want one of those little rubber boats like the Navy SEALs have. We can put a motor on the back and go jump waves. And I found it, and I was like, these are pretty cool. What if I wanted to sell these, like, or how many would I need to buy to get like a really good discount? And I gathered all the information and talked to my dad and said, hey, this guy says if we pre-buy 10, he'll give us the franchise rights. I can sell these. This is an easy sale, Dad. Like anybody's got a boat, you can put a little trolling motor on it. Now you can go back and forth to shore. Like come on, Dad. So we drove up to Long Island, New York, and picked up, a dozen boats and drove them back on a trailer. And I went and sold them. Like we'd just walk up and down the dock at a little lake in Indiana, and hey, you want one of these? And drive up to people on a little trolling motor. And my mom kept all the money. She's like, you don't need thousands of dollars before you turn into a teenager. And when you break stuff over the years, I'm just going to use that money. And she was right. I remember we like knocked all the windows out of the barn one year. I talked my cousin into shooting him out with a BB gun. And, that came out. I had to fix it, of course. Like my grandma came like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
You're going to knock out all the windows? Sorry. So that came out. I remember I got real close to like one of those orange ditch paint cans, and shot it with a BB gun. It like sprayed ditch paint in my eyes, so I had to go to the eye doctor. So that came out of the budget. I broke some stuff.
Did you end up with any money left?
Eventually, yeah. So
I'm just
kind of like fast forward, I had this like awesome childhood, and then right after my 17th birthday, my dad crushed his L4, L5, S1 discs in his back.
Like in an accident?
Yeah, just construction accident, just carrying stuff, twisting, crushed discs. Years of hard labor. And then I graduated high school in 2008. That's a shitty year to be a home builder. So I went from like, filling out my housing, I'm getting ready to go off to college and just drink for 4 or 5 years and be a derelict, to, oh shit, you're going to work tomorrow. And like, I had in my mind being the firstborn that I was going to always like be involved with the family business. So it just kind of like really turned up to where, oh, this is on right now. You're not going to get to take these next 4 years off and screw off. You're going to be kind of working. So I, did what every, kid in that position would do. I joined a pyramid scheme with Donald Trump, got into network marketing because they'll take anybody. Yeah. And they had just leadership seminars that they would do like at least once a quarter. And because I wasn't going to school, I was just so terrified of being stupid. Like all my friends are going to go off and they're going to be smart and I'm going to end up in this little corn town a loser. So I like did the math and I was like, all right, I can just go to these leadership seminars and kind of pick my professors and fly around the country and it's still going to be less than I would have spent on tuition. So I did at least 100 days before I turned 25. I kind of committed. I was like 19 to 25. I'm going to do 1,000 in-home sales meetings to kind of figure out what my conversion rate is in sales and how good am I. And then if I want to go do something else, I'll at least have the skill set. I know how to be a plumber, but I don't necessarily want to break my back like my dad just did. I'd rather get paid to talk for a living. And that really like kept me, I would say, on the straight and narrow for sure. Cause I was just angry at 18, as like rebellious as you could be. And I had really good mentors and I really got into like personal growth in my car. So I would just go to the library and just clean out audiobooks, into a big bag and just pour through it. And I was like, I'll work construction during the day. I'll go do these in-home sales meetings at night. And if I spend ages 19 to 25 taking jobs for skills instead of trying to get rich, that's going to serve me better in my future because I don't know any 22 or 25-year-old kids that have a bunch of money that keep it.
How the hell did you know all this?
So I lucked out with, I got into a guy named Jim Rohn, who was like a personal development speaker. Same guy that Tony Robbins.
Like like when you're 18, 19?
19, like
right
day before I turned 18, it was kind of like, okay, here. Because I was also so unhappy and so desperate for answers because I had a great life. Everything was sweet. And then all of a sudden in the course of a year, like, it sucks. Our house is under foreclosure. My dad, who, you always look up, my dad will take care of it. Well, now my dad is, his back's broken. It's a different, so it just switched very quickly. And when there was, Jim Rohn was a big one. George Zalicki was a big one that I could get kind of these leadership talks on tape. And I was pretty open and desperate for answers. And I was totally willing to submit myself to like some sort of group think that wasn't me calling my shots because all my buddies that I was going to high school with, I just didn't see anybody on a good path. I didn't see anything that I was like, oh, I want to stick with my buddies and, drink and do drugs. It was like,
and part of that's Ohio as well, right?
Yeah. I grew up, I loved where I grew up. It was incredible. I have no ability to give my kids that life because it's a different time, but I just grew up on a little horse farm. My grandpa could go out there and work. He had like thoroughbred horses. So he would go out and I could run out and see my grandpa every day. Dad's office was right at the end of the driveway. And we had like less than 5,000 people in our town. So it was like a really small town feel. That's awesome when you're a kid. At about 18, you're like, this sucks. Yeah. There's no pretty people around. I've already
dated all these girls.
Oh my God. I had one girlfriend in high school and I remember like breaking up with her like early, maybe like junior year or something. And then just having that, oh shit, there's no other girl. Like this is it. You kind of have to pick your one person you're going to stay with for the rest of high school because there's nobody else. So I also tell people like, if you want to be focused on a career, Ohio is a really good place to do it because there's nothing else to do. You're not going to be distracted by beautiful people. It's just going to be. It's very easy to listen to old leadership guys. But when I was 19, I saw a guy named John C. Maxwell in San Diego, California, and he talked about the law of the lid. and like everything rising and falling on leadership. And I was like sitting off to the right, like I got up pretty close, and it was like a 90-minute talk. And I remember I went out and like sat on a bench and just looked out over Coronado Island and just bawled my eyes out and was like, the law of the lid is if you're a 7, you'll never be able to lead an 8 or a 9 or a 10 because there's a lid on your leadership. And you can develop more leadership, but like you got to be honest about where you're at. And if you're a 4, not that many people are going to be willing to follow you, and you're going to have a lot less opportunities in life. So I would say from like early on 19, I was like, oh shit, your life pretty much sucks right now, and it's not going to get better unless you get better. And you're going to probably want to use some like heavy grit sandpaper to sand down these rough edges. And I just was like maniacal about it.
That's super mature. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I wouldn't wish it on an enemy, but it was a blessing. Like,
yeah,
to this day, it was a blessing.
Well, you know, like I always tell people, like if my parents hadn't been so strict, I'd have like tattoos on my face. You know what I mean? And so, like you know what I mean. So, like these lessons that you learn, the way you learn, like sometimes that's like really important. Especially, it sounds like like you weren't exactly the most couth. Like, I mean, you're a wild guy and, doing wild stuff. Man. So you needed something like that, I guess, Yeah,
it was. And I think that was a maturity that, like, looking back, I can say, like, hey, good job, Caleb. You did great there. I knew left to my own devices, it wasn't going to be good.
Right.
And I knew left to, like, what are my buddies up to? That's not a good strategy. It was like, okay, find some mentors, some people that you look up to. And that was enough to keep me, I don't know, I was also working around the clock. So that helps a lot too. Like I would go do construction work during the day. I went to community college for like just under an associate's degree, but even that was just out of, I don't know what else to do. I know this isn't
I'm supposed
me.
to do something like this.
And I got lucky there too, because I remember my mom taking me up there. There was like a little satellite campus, and the first day I'm just angry. I remember I put my shoes on the desk for some reason, just went and laid down on the couch, just like an asshole. And there was like one of the counselors that came out and just immediately clocked me and was like, hey, what's your name? How you doing? I'm going to put you in a leadership program. Like this is, you're not a loser. You are doing donuts in the street and you need direction. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be donuts forever if I don't steer you in a direction. So that was, shout out Dwayne Kirkman. You're the real deal. He luckily just like scooped me right up and was like, here, let me put you in this. So my time there, I had a little bit of good direction. Definitely that John C. Maxwell stuff changed my life. Like that was, I saw that and I was like, all right, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Because this is a guy in his 70s. He's loving people 30,000 at a time. And he's delivering information in a way that's really effective. And you only need to hear it one time to have a permanent impact. So then right off the bat, I was like, that's a good litmus test for if it's good. Can I say it one time and have a permanent impact? So I was like, all right, you got to get good at that. Just put as much effort into like, becoming a better speaker and being a better leader as you can. So I did the in-home sales up until I was 20, the day before I turned, like right before I had my 25th birthday. And then I was like, I'm tired of telling housewives they can be CEOs. This is such a, I'm going to go do real business. And I went and did a bunch of big commercial work. So like LED lighting to like businesses and schools and universities, and did that for up until my 30th birthday. And then was like, all right, sabbatical time. Let's, you're going to want to get married. You're going to want to, do something else that's a little more, I was kind of betting it all on red and it came up black. And, the guy I worked for, after a series of concussions, ended up joining a cult. It all fell apart. Like we were really kicking ass there for a while, and then it kind of all crumbled.
Okay,
right at the end.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, you had a boss. This guy was your boss, and he had seriously a series of concussions and then decided to join a cult?
Yeah, so I guess kind of I'll give the clip because I mean it is fun. Looking back, it's funny now. It was miserable at the time because I was like, oh dang, that was a lot of years of your life. But so yeah,
How long have you been working for this company?
So I found them when I was maybe 23.
Out in California?
This was in Ohio.
Ohio, okay.
So I had met him when I first got into the company. Was called ACN. So we would go sell like home services. So it's like phone service, internet, TV. At one point, gas and electricity deregulated in Ohio, and that was the first time it was deregulated. And I had signed up one of these guys in my team that knew these guys, and he was bragging about how they got so many electric customers, and they were doing door to door. And I was like, is it you or is it your boss? And he's like, well, it's my boss. I was like, introduce me to your boss. And I was trying to get them to sign over a bunch of electric accounts through me. And there was like 3 guys. They're like, nah, you're going to come work for us. Like, we're going to put you to work. We're going to do this in reverse. So I started working for them when I was maybe like 23. And at first we were just selling LED lighting commercially, so like warehouses and stuff. And that was going really good, but the one business partner there had developed a coke and hooker problem.
It happened.
So at one point, I remember I didn't know exactly what was going on because he told me he got cancer, and he was like, "Hey, you can't tell my son who works with us, but I'm going to like be harder to get a hold of, and like, I need you to keep this secret, but like, I'm dying. I need you to." And I was like, "Oh man," I'm like carrying the guilt of this, and I found out no cancer. This guy just cleaned the bank account out. So this guy was like, "Hey, I just lost my cousin at the time, so I was just sad, depressed." He's like, "You're the only person that's selling anything for us, so I'll totally understand if you just go get another job, because there's no money to pay you. Even the projects that you sold, like the bank account is empty. This is done. But if you stay on, I'll just give you a piece of it, and here's kind of the future of what we're going to go do. We're going to do it as another company." And I was crying on customers at that point. So I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm not doing anything else. So I went, and so that would have been like 23, 24. We started, doing bigger projects, and that was kind of the first robbery. And then a second robbery came around. He was
Same guy.
And
You got cocaine cancer twice.
no, he was just so there was a business partner that took off. That guy's gone. Now the other guy that I worked with for about the 7 years, he's somebody that would win first at things. I don't know if you've ever met somebody like the first time they do anything, they win.
And that was
not good, because then you're overconfident. So that was the first robbery. The second robbery, he invested in a gold mine in Reno, Nevada. These guys were turning toxic waste dirt into gold, and they needed more money to invest. I was like, nah, dude, if you can make gold, that's it. That's the game. You don't need any more money. And that went there, and I was like, hey man, you kind of I've been through 2 robberies with you where I don't get paid on my stuff. We've built up tens of millions of dollars worth of solar projects that are supposed to go in this next year, but like, I'm not sticking around through a third robbery. Like, you need to nail this one. I'm going to go take my money and go do something else, because I was just 200 days a year on the road, just burning out. Mm-hmm. Approaching 30, burning out, pretty angry. Been working for a long time. This should have worked. I've going to all the seminars. I've done all the stuff. And yeah, just was playing soccer, had a real bad concussion. And I was like, hey, recover from this, but you got to quit playing soccer. Like, you're almost 40. Get your shit together. Like, this is a dumb injury, and you're pretty stupid in the meetings. We got to, get it together. And had a second concussion playing soccer, and it just got real weird. There was about maybe the last 6 months, I'm traveling out of state. We're kind of cleaning all these projects up, and he's just drawing swirls on the whiteboard and talking about the University of Science and Philosophy. I said, what is that? He came in, he's like, we got the whole research department for the University of Science and Philosophy. And at this point, I was a little skeptical. So I was like, what does that mean? He's like, well, you know, we're going to go, you know, they're going to dedicate their resources so that we can make like infinite energy. I'm like, okay, what do you need from us? Because I'm working hard, and we had made a deal. I wouldn't buy a sports car until I took professional driving classes. He wasn't allowed to go to any 3-day retreats by himself because he'd join a cult. And he's like, well, hey, man, on your 30th birthday, we're going to go to an event called The Awakening in Virginia. And I was like, okay. And he's like, well, watch all these videos, you know, just like watch these YouTube videos and check this out. And on top of the concussions, he was trading cryptocurrency really effectively. So he's just up all night, round the clock, concussed, watching YouTube videos. And he's like, what do you think of these videos? I'm like, it looks like a cult, bro. It looks like we're going to a cult retreat. So we go to Virginia to a place called Swannanoa. And there was a guy named Walter Russell. That was who started this thing. And he was alive way back when. He was an artist. Honestly, probably would have been a cool guy to hang out with. A lot of the presidents had him do artwork for him.
Like not in the cult, though?
Yeah. And then he wrote like some self-help stuff. And fast forward 70 years, a bunch of people that look like they got dressed at Goodwill have bastardized it into a cult. And we went to the event called The Awakening. It was at an old Porsche dealership that somebody had donated because this guy used to have all of his artwork up in this mansion called Swannanoa. Well, that guy passed away, and the kids inherited it, and they were like, hey, get all your shit out of here. So they found this Porsche dealership to dedicate it to and house all this stuff. So we went on my 30th birthday for the Awakening, and I sat through, 3 days of speakers that were given way too much microphone time. And I remember saying, like, I've been to, at that point, it was like over 160, 170 days of leadership seminars. I know what I know what good quality notes look like. This is garbage. These are ketamine addicts who are talking about magic powers and plasma dragons and shit. I know so because they told me they were ketamine addicts. So that was my 30th birthday, and the plasma dragons was the part that I remember they were talking about. Like, he was like, yeah, they open up these holes in these Chinese buildings. They open up holes in the middle so the plasma dragons can move from the water to the mountains. And I was like, did you just say plasma dragons? I was like, yeah. Because I'm a guy that sits in the front row seat. It's not like I sit in the back and take my notes. I sit front, center. There's never going to be anybody there. The seat's always waiting for me, and I want the best experience. And I was just like, this is everything I've worked for the past 7 years, I can tell, is crumbling down. So we came in that Monday, and I was like, hey, I'm going to need you to open up the books. Because we'd whiffed on all the installs. We had a bunch of schools that were supposed to get their solar projects installed over the summer, and none of them did. And it was like tens of millions of dollars worth of solar. And I was like, hey, you have till my birthday to kind of like clean this up. And then we were at a cult retreat on my birthday. So I came back, hey, we're going to need to see the books, or unfortunately, this is where we break up. So I went. I remember I was just dating my wife, and she wanted me to meet her host family. It was like the next day. And they were like, hey, what do you do for a living? I was like, well, as of yesterday, I'm seeking future employment to see what my future is going to be, because I had bet it all. I had bet it all on red, and it came up black. And I had put a bunch of years into it. I built all those relationships. And it's kind of like, all right, hard reset at 30. Change your name, change your number. It's a whole new world. We're going to go do something else. I luckily that time I got some really good advice from Jim Rohn, who said, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Mm. So even though I literally turned 30 with no money and none of that stuff came in, I had all these like skills. And that was also really a blessing for me and my wife, because she got to see me at a place where I wasn't on top of it. And I remember when I told my parents that we were getting married, they're like, he has no money, right? And she's, yeah, that's fine. And my mom proceeded to tell her 2 more times, yeah, but you have no money. I mean, a lot of potential, no money. And it was good. We got married. She handed me all the money she had saved in an envelope. It was like $746. And she's like, here's everything I have. I trust you. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, how much school debt do you have? And she was like, none. And I was like, oh, great, we're rich. She's like, is that a lot of money? I was like, it is not. But if you're not coming to the table with negative equity,
you're positive.
Yeah, like we're cash rich.
Yeah, we're winning.
So yeah, I had a Dodge Challenger. I sold that the day after we got married and bought like a $1,200 van off Craigslist, and that was the daily driver because she's from Monterrey, Mexico originally. So we had a year of immigration where she can't work, she can't drive. You're just kind of in park, and she's got a fashion design degree. She's the smart one. It was very cool to start our marriage off that way too, with like not a lot of extra.
What's real, right? You're talking about the
real
real
I was
place.
like, oh, this is clearly my wife. She's awesome. She cares about me, and she's not impressed by She's not impressed by my money. That's for sure.
Well, I think, when we first kind of started, I was talking about that I moved my girlfriend in and got her ex-girlfriend in and got her pregnant and stuff like that. And again, like when she came here, I was getting divorced. She was leaving she was living with her boyfriend, leaving her boyfriend, right? And so we're both like going through a breakup together, kind of as friends, But there was a lot of empathy there, and then there's a lot of sympathy, and then a lot of love because we had dated before, and we didn't break up horribly, right? And I think that in a weird way, and like in a weird way of caring for a friend in the very beginning, it made our relationship really solid. I think there's something similar. She cares for you just like as a person, as a friend, as like someone that's in your life, and about everything about you, and not just the great stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I lucked out. We had dated because I told her the same thing I'd always said, which is, hey, I'm very open to getting married, but I want to date for at least 3 years before I get married. Because the first 2 years, it's a drug. You're just in love with each other.
I feel like it's the first 6 months. And then after the first 6 months, then we
kind of wanes.
We kind of see who the person is, right? Yeah. And then after that 6 month exposure either becomes like, if it's good, if you're getting along, I think it's great. But then the stuff tends to get worse after that. And then probably somewhere around the 2 year mark or so, 3 year mark, you're kind of like, yeah, I got to either get in or get out,
I think the thing I remember reading the 5 love languages very early at like 2021. And that was kind of my model that I used, was to kind of like, all right, figure out what love languages exist and how to interact in relationship. But also I had this belief that it took me about 20 hours of eyeball to eyeball time to really at least figure out kind of what a person's about or what they're like. And it takes a couple dates to get to 20 hours. So the idea of somebody being like, oh, we've been dating for 2 months. Well, okay, so you went to dinner every other weekend for the past 2 months. You guys have been dating for 16 hours. So you have no idea who this person is. So I remember having that kind of in my head, putting up the barrier of like, I want to be married, I want to date for at least 3 years before we get married. And she was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, you're the man of my dreams. We can date as long as you like. I was like, oh, shit. Kind of disarmed me with that one. I've never had that never been the man of anyone's dreams before. Now you're competing on another level.
You've never been given space like that. She just gave you space.
Fine. Okay, I'll respect that. And I had been used to like a negotiation right after. Oh, yeah. Again, cool. That's a flag. Where this was like, no, that's fine. And then pandemic came through. The family that she was living with, nice enough people. Everybody dealt with pandemic weird, but the way it seemed from the outside looking in that they dealt with it, they were like, you can either go back to Mexico or you can stay with us. But if you stay with us, it's no contact with anybody.
Oh.
So it's 60 days. She's just kind of locked in the basement. And, I love COVID. I just moved back with my parents. I got laid off from my job. I had switched jobs. I was there 87 days. You needed to be there 90 days to qualify for any of the checks. So I was like, shit, I'm going to go broke again. Here we go. So I just went back and hung out with my parents and like would talk to her over the phone. And then the first weekend we hung out, she like set this little mason jar on the table. And I was like, what's in there? She's like, well, just read them. So I start like reading through all these little notes that she'd written. And every day for 60 days of lockup, she had like written some memory of a date I'd taken her on or some, something nice that I'd done. And by the time I got through all 60 of these little love notes, I was like, shit, dude, you love this girl. Like this is clearly your wife. You can like quit looking. And I pretty much knew, I was like, all right, we should go get married. Cause also the border was closed at the time. Ooh. And her visa or whatever it was expiring. So I tell it on stage jokative that she was like, I could go back to Mexico, but you'll never see me again. Like it wasn't that at all. She was as sweet as it could be. But for me, it was like very clear, like, oh, all this has happened for a reason. This is your wife. Mm-hmm. And you can start this right now. And she's willing to give you what you want. She'll go back to Mexico and she'll come back with a different visa and you guys can do this. But like, what are you negotiating for, dude? This is it. And I made the decision. I just wanted to make it to 30 with no kids, no STDs, no ex-wives. Like I knew if I got married before 30, I was going to pick wrong.
So you made it 30 with no STDs,
no kids, and no ex-wives. I nailed it.
Well, okay. Well, did you say you've been married twice? So
I married my wife twice because I love her so much. We got married the first time out in we just did like a backyard wedding. Okay. July 5th, 2020, middle of COVID, masked up, couple of people, hot day, and then we were having dinner with some friends later, and they were like, "What's it like to propose to your wife?" I was like, shit, that's a really good question, because I just wrote it up on a whiteboard and started strategizing once I realized it. And I was like, honey, were you kind of hoping I was going to like pop out of the bushes and hand you a ring? And she's like, yeah, kind of. So I realized I had never done a proposal. So I went out and like got an engagement ring. And then like we had booked a trip to, my buddy had been calling me for a decade and saying, go to EDC with me, which is like a big rave out in Las Vegas. And I had always told him I wasn't mature enough to go. And he's like, dude, it'll be the best weekend of your life. And I was like, that's why I can't go.
Yeah,
because
if
the best weekend of my life is doing Molly with a bunch of naked people out in the, I'm never coming home, bro. This is going to be the end of it. So I was like, all right, this will be the trip. Because he's like, dude, I got the penthouse suite. We're getting helicopters, Lamborghinis. Like, this is the move. And I was like, all right, we'll go. So I proposed to her, and we didn't tell anybody we were going to get married. We kept it a secret. And then we flew to LA and then drove to Vegas, and I got there like late at night, and I was like, hey, we're getting married tomorrow. Do you guys want to come? And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So we went and drove Lamborghinis during the morning, went to the Little White Wedding Chapel, and got married that evening. So now Britney Spears, Michael Jordan, and me, 3 people that have been married at the Little White Wedding Chapel. That's 3 big hitters.
Yeah. That's funny.
So yeah, that was our little that was wedding number 2. And I definitely recommend I've now been to over 3,000 houses doing sales, and I have talked to other guys that like they didn't give their wife the wedding that she wanted, or they breezed over it completely. Mm-hmm. And I've definitely told them that, like, hey, dude, you keep kicking the can down the road. You guys need to fly to Vegas and get married. Yeah. Because it's going to give her not everything. Like, she wanted you to do it right the first time. The same way my wife wanted me to propose right the first time. I don't do a lot of things right the first time. I'm normally a screw up and figure it out later. But when I figure out the right answer, like, I am quick to want to correct. And I've had to have that conversation with guys like in their 50s and 60s. Like, dude,
I don't understand that either.
Get your shit together, bro. This is your wife. You're going to wake up from her every day for the rest of your life. She's clearly pissed about this. and you're, I don't know.
Well, I think, another thing kids will do is they'll just suck the selfishness, right? Or they should suck the selfishness right out of you. You know what I mean? But I think that, some people don't ever kind of grow out of it,
Yeah, it's I don't think that I would say I definitely grew up in that selfish world. Like and luckily just I don't know, life will bring you to your knees if you are selfish enough. Like it'll knock the shit out of you eventually.
100%.
And I was just lucky enough to have that early on and not get arrested in the process. That's all I can say is I just happened to luck out. Like, none of the car wrecks were bad. None of the close calls ended in, anything bad. We went to another cult retreat with that same guy.
I was gonna say, did you say that you've been to 200 days worth of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
I think I counted it up. I think it's up to like 220.
So, but tell me, and where you said a couple of them were kind of culty, not just like a couple of the things, or
the joke I tell is 1 out of 100 is a cult because I've been to over 200 days, and 2 of them that I like. There's 2 retreats that I can point to. There was another one that we went to in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Me and the same guy, and.
Did he take you to all the cult retreats?
He's the only one that picked out the cult retreats. It's not like I found them.
Yeah, your retreats are normal retreats.
No, I do the right thing. Be a student, not a follower, is something that I learned a long time ago. Like I'm very willing to go and learn and not have it absorb my whole brain.
Sure.
I've also not watched any news since I was 21 years old. So I've not had a lot of propaganda bullshit in my head. So I'm pretty good at
making your own decisions.
Things once I get there and not being swayed. So yeah, the other one was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We were doing a bunch of. There was a guy named Drunvalo Melchizedek who wrote a bunch of books like The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, all this sacred geometry stuff. And we went out there, and it was supposed to be a 4-day. It was just in this guy's house. And we stayed at a hotel. There was maybe 6 or 7 other people that stayed in this guy's house. So we were the only ones that left in the evenings. Everybody else is 24 hours a day in this place. And it snowed like a son of a bitch the first day. Level 3, I want to say more than 2 feet. Everything shuts down. So we're running through the streets to get to this little guy's house. There's no heat. We've got a wood stove. And, we're learning about energy fields and all sorts of wild stuff, which honestly, I will say this in terms of just spooky shit. We did this thing where you align all your chakras and you connect your energy bars, and I don't know what all we did, but there was a point I would say by the end of the 3rd day where I felt like I was having full communication conversations with my buddies telepathically, no words, but and not in an uncomfortable weird way. In the same way we're talking and it's comfortable, I felt very comfortable. Oh shit, okay, this is kind of like when you see something work, it's not that weird,
right?
And then I remember that night, we sat around, smoked a joint, and the one guy there, we'll call him Merlin. It was just a bald dude who wore a little a little crystal on his forehead and was I'm gonna do one of these bowl ceremonies. And if you guys want to stick around, and I'm kind of okay, that's fine. And at one point my buddy he's hey, we need to get out of here. Something's wrong, something's off. And I'm okay, cool, I'll protect you. Let's get out of here. And as soon as we said that, this guy turns on us, just get out. And I remember he's doing it, but I feel 100% confident that this dude was trying to cast spells on these people and just do some real weird demonic shit. And we came back the next day and we're hey man, we've gotten everything we need. We're gonna go ahead and skip the 4th day. We got to get out of here. But definitely that was the other one. I was this was crazy, dude. This was not certified teachers teaching us anything. This is a guy that just used to eat a lot of ecstasy and is now talking about some books he read and, burning sage. So yeah, I've been to some kooky shit, which is also why I'm very I try to stay away from anything that sounds wooey. just because I think it sounds so like it's crunchy for people. And if you're someone who's like an intellectual, it's really tough to be like, let's talk about manifesting. Let's talk about this. So there's a bunch of different words for it. I think that there's way more to it than just hope.
I think that I believe in woo shit and the universe and that there's a God or whatever else. I think we're all kind of talking about the same thing. But I also think there are people that are here for some reason to exploit other people using that kind of stuff. And whereas it might be part of their life, maybe they're just the dark side of the force. You know what I mean? Maybe they're just the people that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I've had it in my mind. I remember I heard a pastor say one time, he was like, hey, there is spiritual warfare going on for your soul all the time. It's just not a battlefield that you're prepared to step onto. So I've always been very leery of like, I don't want to get around anybody doing satanic shit.
No,
I don't want to be around Ouija boards. I don't want black candles in the house. Like I just, you know what I mean? Whatever anybody's doing, they're like, oh, we're talking to witches. I'm like, hey, maybe chill the fuck out on that. Yeah. That's not, you're just not, it's not so much that you're, whether it's
Why are you
real or
talking to
not, it's
witches?
just, dude, you're stepping onto a battlefield that you're not protected.
Yeah, don't be fucking with that.
This is such an unprotected place that you're going out there and roll the dice. What if you're wrong?
Yeah.
And
you think you know how to handle a spirit.
Fine, but like, man, do you really want to deal with that? And I, especially as like, I personally believe in God. I've been baptized 3 times because I kept sinning. I was like, dip me again, brother. But whenever anybody's like got like resistance to even spirituality, I just tell them like, hey, you don't got to put a label on it. Whatever you would do, I would, even if someone was like atheist and they don't want to pursue anything with religion, I would say, find a way to pursue a relationship with your creator, whatever that means for you. Yeah. And even if it means cleaning up stuff with your parents, I've studied years of psychology, and a lot of the self-help stuff comes back to it's all some bullshit with your parents. Like that's
100%,
you cut through all of it. That's what it comes down to. Like, and a lot of times a therapist isn't going to tell you that in the first meeting because then you don't come back again.
Oh, I remember when my therapist started talking shit about my mom, and I was like, don't you dare talk.
This isn't for you.
Hey, don't you dare talk shit about my mama. You know what I mean? I just remember being so offended. And then I was like, I'm not going back. And then like it started eating on me after a couple weeks. And I was like, well, I want to know what does she mean by that? Like, why would she do that? Why would she say that? And so I went back, and then that's when I really started working on a relationship with my parents to have a good one. You know what I mean?
There was a time where I wasn't speaking with my dad. There was a time my whole family unit was fractured. And then like 2017, I just was like, all right, I'm going to spend this whole year and just put my family back together. And it worked. You know, I mean, my little brother was like, dude, I hate you, right? And I was like, oh, I'm very aware. But I'm like a different person than who you were mad at.
Yeah, give me a chance kind of thing.
If you come this much towards me, you're going to see that it's all love. Just bring it on in, big guy. And luckily, my sister was very quick to forgive me as well. She's like, I saw you put it back together with Calvin. That was, you're in my book too.
That's awesome.
But there's something called a Dickens process. I would say of all the stuff I found, there's something called a Dickens process that, anybody could go do. That's the biggest, I would say, exercise that if someone had to, hey, I have to quit smoking, or hey, I have to quit, I don't know, whatever their vice is. I have to quit porn. I have to quit smoking. I have to quit, overeating, whatever their vice is. I've read a lot of books. I've been to a lot of stuff. Find somewhere you can go through a Dickens process, and it's just a mental exercise, and it'll help you like category it out and mute it. You won't have those issues anymore. Tony Robbins does it in his Unleash the Power Within, which that's a cheap. I mean, that's a couple $100 to hire one of the greats to do it over the course of a couple days. So that's a really great resource. But I had done it the first couple times, like early 20s out in California with a totally different group that I just flew out. And That's the most effective thing I've found. I mean, there's a lot of like self-help books and everybody's got their slant on it. But that's also what got me into the comedy side was there's so many of these like self-help guys or like sales trainers that are just dorks, dude. Like for lack of a better term, like, are you ready to grind? It's like, nah, dude.
Settle down.
What do you? No,
No,
I would rather just be efficient with my time and go out and hang out with my family. So I was like, oh, if I could be a comedic sales trainer, I've put the time in to go be able to get results with people. It's just so much more fun when you're funny.
yeah, that's right.
And like my wife and I did all the Tony Robbins stuff last year. And like he'll have everybody lymphocyze. So you just jump, get your body moving. You know, that's gonna be the most, you know, everything starts with physiology. And you can get the same thing from laughter. So I was like, okay, cool. As near as makes no difference, I can hypnotize people with my voice patterns and make them laugh and get them into this routine. And then I don't have to have them jumping.
Right.
Not that there's anything, you know, the jumping's the most effective way to do it. I would never never bash the guys that have figured this shit out before. But I was like, okay, cool. That's a unique way for me to play a game that the other team doesn't know is going on. And now, kind of like the sales, like I sell safe showers to baby boomers so they don't fall down in the bathtub. And because I have a background plumbing, I'm able to like talk with my customers and say, you've had 3 people out here to talk to. Most of these guys just used to sell cars and now they sell bathrooms. And they go, yeah, you're right. So I'm the only guy that you're going to meet that's actually been a plumber. I've now been doing 17 years of straight commission sales work so we can have a real conversation about what this really is. And ultimately, when you're 16, you get a car, and in your 60s and 70s, you get a walk-in shower. If I never existed, you're going to do this. So what is it that you want to do out of this? And am I the best person that you've met? And like overwhelmingly, it's like, yeah, by a mile. Like I'm dealing with a bunch of sleazy dorks. And every year I would get opportunities to go sell like medical devices. And it's like, oh, you want me to compete against hot chicks on Adderall? Fuck that. I would rather compete against
Poor salesman.
you know what I mean? Shitty sales guys that are
You better hope hot chicks don't take over the walk-in
I hope
tub.
they don't. The last thing I want to do is work harder for the efficiency that I feel like I've broken my back for. Yeah, I spent 6 months going to 7 different places and just kind of interviewing, you know, the managers and the owners and who sells what. And like, I really did my research ahead of time because I knew like, hey, if everything goes right, this is the only thing I'll do again from a sales standpoint until I am just doing speaking full time. And it took me a while. Everything's getting bought by private equity. So all these sweet sales gigs that were so dope 10 years ago, they're just all getting bought up by private equity. So they suck. So you have guys that remember how good it was and they sit around and complain about the good old days between fast food runs, and people that just used to sell cars, and this is another, 15 to 30 price point. So they're going to get in and go sell this. And luckily, that's an easy competition to me. I can't imagine the family my wife babysat the second time for. They're all doctors, and her dad was like, I'll hook it up. You'd be great at this. And it's like, dude, why? I'm not trying to be the best at selling knee replacements. Like, I don't want to be the best at, I want to be someone that's effective at communicating and that can get people results from saying things one time. And that's what I've been working all these years for. That's what I've been like putting the time into. That's what I want to go do with my life. And I don't want to take a speed bump to try to learn how to sell spine replacements.
Well, I feel like that, maybe I don't know. You're providing a service maybe more than you're selling, and it sounds like that you're having real authentic conversations with these people, and that feels probably way more valuable than going to sell medical equipment and having bullshit conversations about stuff that they're going to be 5 other things that look just like it and all that jazz that comes along with it,
It's very weird. And my grandma picked the name Caleb out of the Bible, told my mom that it had to be Caleb. And like, I would go over there. She would babysit every Wednesday so that my mom would have like a full day to work with my dad. And it was always like, you have to tell the truth. You have to tell the truth. You have to tell the truth. And it took me deep into my 20s before I was reliably telling the truth. And it was like one of the hardest things that I've ever like really committed, because everybody's a bullshit artist. And it was one of those like really tough things that you carry a lot of guilt for, because you're like, dude, I'm not honest. I'm not an honest person. What a shitty thing to be. And if you have any, if you have any desire for things to be right and balanced, there's a part of you that triggers a self-sabotage principle. You feel, you vibrate in the world asking to be punched.
Right.
And I remember finally getting to where I was like, okay, I'm reliably telling the truth now. And then now when I go in, especially to, somebody's house, I'm the only guy that's told the truth the whole time they've been there. I'm playing a completely different game. They can tell it. I'm the only guy that says, hey, I drove my own car and my own gas to get here. I only get paid if you get paid. Everybody else says the company covers it. Yeah, they were lying to you. Didn't you feel that? Didn't you feel that? That's why they were twisting your arm off when it was time to go. Well, yeah. Now that we're having a real conversation, you don't have to make a decision today. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how was I to deal with? Well, you were a 10. I normally make $1,000. How much of my money do you need to take for us to make a decision? Do you need to beat me, or can you just let me get paid like a professional because I deliver professional service? And like, it's a culture thing. Most everybody's like, no, you were great. Here we go. Depending upon how culturally they were raised, I know which cultures need to negotiate for them to satisfy their buying cycle. I believe selling is a Broadway play performed by a psychiatrist. So if that's what that guy needs, that's my job. I have to deliver him beating me. I know that there are certain cultures that they want to rip out my guts and they want me to feel like I was destroyed. So I know that that's what I have to deliver. And I'll play it up. I'll say, I normally make this. How much of my money do you want? I want all of it. I'll literally make no money. That's the deal. That's what I want to do. Take it or leave it. Okay. And we'll do our handshake, because that's what that guy wants. It doesn't matter the product. It doesn't matter the service. It doesn't matter. None of that mattered. He just wanted to win the negotiation. So I've also learned that over the years, that a lot of sales is me asking what they really want, what finish line they care about. And one thing that I really got from the guy that also took me to the cults, we took something called Sandler selling. So do you remember the old show Columbo?
Mm-hmm.
Where he was just very bumbly, fumbly, like, one more thing. I started learning that in like 2017. And it's a lot of that. I never hard close anybody. I did a whole year where I never even asked anybody to buy. They had to completely roll over. So that helped a lot, to where now I'm in a position, especially for like my ideal client, which is somebody in their 60s and 70s who grew up with manners. You know what I mean? That's how they operate. They work really well with that. And because I don't ever offer ultimatums and I'm not beating anybody. We're looking for a win-win-win. That's helped a lot. Yeah. That's, I would say, been my other secret weapon. And I don't have to be a know-it-all, because also nobody wants a know-it-all. So I get to just kind of be a dummy out there. And like, what are we even doing here? Well, I think I need a safe shower. You look healthy enough to me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm nervous, that I'm going to fall down. But you haven't already fallen. Well, I did. Well, tell me about that. And then again, it's just, okay, well, let them fully express themselves. Because also, guarantee, I'm the only guy that listened. Because Tommy Toyota over here has been trying to tell him they need a shower for an hour. So that's been, I would say this has definitely been my favorite of all the jobs. I had some, especially like 19 to 25, I had a bunch of really cool, interesting jobs that were just fun. And, the time was, I got to run a mixed martial arts gym. when Rich Franklin was champion of the UFC.
Oh, wow.
His jiu-jitsu coach, George Gurgel, showed up one day to my buddy's house, and I was moving in with my buddy, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "I'm moving in." He's like, "Dude, you should be living in a condo with 2 dogs and 3 women. What are you doing living under your buddy's house? You need to come work for me. Like, something's going on funky at my gym. You need to come work." So I got to go run that for a year. I ran these Liberty tax offices, like the Liberty tax. So there was a lady, it was down in Cincinnati, Ohio. Her son was freestyle skiing in the Sochi Olympics, I think. So she was just tied up driving him around because he, is a kid. And she gave me like 2 offices to run, and I went, and that's where I learned B2B from. And I had to go dressed as a Statue of Liberty. So I went all through the hood of Cincinnati for like a couple months dressed as a teal Statue of Liberty, going business to business to business, and like, trying to expand things. And I remember that was what attracted me so much to the LED lighting, is that they were like, "Hey, have you ever done business to business?" I was like, "Oh, I'm really good. Do I have to wear a dress?" And they were like, "No." And I'm like, "I'm going to crush it. This is on easy mode. This is going to be so easy." So yeah, that was a lot of the stuff. I would say a lot of it. And then I started doing the stand-up comedy in 2017 as well, because I was like, all right, you've been writing jokes forever, and you've been really focused on working around the clock in sales. And I kind of had this sense that like, hey, you now need a new way to like deal with your anger, and a new way to, first it was just fitness. Like, I was way more in shape through my 20s, and I was angrier.
A little bit more motivated.
36, I'm like, let's have a beer and eat some pizza. But yeah, it was just, that's when I started doing the open mics in Columbus, Ohio, and did that up until COVID, and did a lot of improv. And I would say that I'm definitely better at improv. My skill set in improv was higher than where it started in comedy. I grew up on like Whose Line Is It Anyway? And being funny was like the thing that gave you the value in our house. Like, I would go out every morning, "Dad, what should I say at school today?" And he's like, "Go to work and ask him who's running this railroad." And I would come home and tell him, and "Oh, that's so funny." And I got away with stuff because I could be funny. And that was like, oh, I'm gonna do that. And then it started up before COVID. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go all in on this. And then COVID came through, and I was like, all right, well, forget this. I'm going to go get married and get my life together. And then maybe like a little over 2 years ago, we were in Mexico, and I just, at my wife's house that she grew up in, I was like sitting in, her childhood bed, looking out the window, and I saw this guy walking down the street with a trumpet and no shoes on, just like, and that was his day. And I was just like, started crying. I was like, all right, life, you've been really blessed, Caleb. You've gotten like a lot of really good cards dealt your way. And yeah, you had some shit you didn't like, but like, look at how it affected you positively in the end. And she got back that day, and I was like, all right, we got to move to Austin, Texas, so I can go be a stand-up comedian, because I'm not going to be able to turn this off. Like, I've been like screwing around with this, but I've definitely learned, if you're going to be the greatest, you got to go be around the best people. And the best people are not in Columbus, Ohio. The greatest speakers in the United States of America are collected in Austin, Texas right now. And they're totally available to let me go play with them if I go get good. And within 60 days, we were here. Like, I was just like,
amazing.
This final segment is brought to you by HeyJustBe.com. I believe that achieving balance in the mental, physical, and metaphysical aspects of your purpose through learning, serving, and creating can transform your life into one you truly enjoy living. Want to learn more? Visit www.heyjustbe.com.
So, how I wrap this thing up is I ask people, what do they do to just be the best version of themselves so they can be good for everybody else? So, man, like, I mean, you do so much stuff, which is like so cool. I mean, and you've done so much stuff. What do you do to prepare to show up to do all these things you do?
I would say like the good one-liners that I would give that people can take to whatever they do and it would still help is I always ask myself two questions. Is what I'm about to do moment by moment taking me towards my goal or away from it? And then the second question is it going to harm anybody else in the process?
Yeah.
And generally, if you can get the right answers to those two questions, proceed with full vigor. Like, whatever it is that you really care about and want to do, as long as you're not violating those two things, that's going to kind of keep you on the straight and narrow. I'm also one of those kids, especially with my wife. I knew I wanted a wife since I was like a little kid. I wanted to like get married and have one wife for the rest of my life. I told her we were going to get married for at least 70 years. That would make us 100. If we wanted to see other people at that point, we could reevaluate, but I give you 70 good years. I would say for relationships, especially, it's worth serving your partner, whatever relationship that is. So I always just looked at it, especially those early years, as a bank. And I want to make as many deposits into that bank as possible and the least amount of big withdrawals as possible so that if a rainy day comes along, you got plenty in the bank. And I've been really blessed to have a bunch of mentors that I put myself in front of, but I also got lucky that they were, there.
And good.
Yeah.
Not cult leaders.
Yeah, not cult leaders. So I would say I've gotten really good at emotional management over the years. That's a skill set that I would recommend to all people. Is you really want to know how to navigate your own emotions, because that wasn't a skill set that my wife came to the table with. So the last 5 years I've been able to manifest and enjoy a lot of gratitude from her direction towards me, saying, wow, you've really been patient with me. And wow, there's been some times where I really flew off the handle at you and you didn't deserve any of it. And instead of reciprocating, you just were patient with me. So I would say the best advice I would give there is like find a third party to say all the stuff that you want to say. Like I told her I wanted to do all those Tony Robbins seminars last year. So we did the full gambit. It's like 26 days worth of stuff. And they're long. I don't know if you've ever done any Tony Robbins stuff.
No, I'm familiar, but I haven't done any.
I didn't know anything about him until I got here. As crazy as that is, I never got
So
a hold of any
all
of this stuff.
everything
I
you
never
went
ran
into-
into any Tony Robbins. And he's done, I want to say 98 total Date with Destiny seminars. That's one he does once a year in December. That's the best 6 days I've ever. After going to 200 and something days, that's the best. If everybody's like, what's one seminar that you would recommend for everybody? That's the one.
Really?
Like, just such a blessing going into the marriage, all the tools that like, again, I wish I could just take my brain and give it to my wife in a tonic and then she would have all those tools and experiences. Well, she's not gonna. So it was just much easier to have a third party say all the things that need to be said and then equip her with the tools so that then now I have all these other opportunities to be proud of her.
Well, you don't want that you don't want the responsibility of teaching her, or
I don't
even
want to coach my wife.
Yeah, none of that, right? Like
husband,
that's
yeah.
not a relationship. You know what I mean?
Correct,
That's
yeah.
somebody else's job. It's like as a personal trainer, you never want to train your spouse because it just
Yeah.
doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you want to have the maturity of not fixing it with a stopgap measure. I remember at one point telling my wife, hey, if you're coming to me and you don't want me to fix it, just go get a gay best friend. I don't want to listen to your problems. And like being very cold about it, like that's a stopgap measure. It's not a solution. What you want is to equip her with the tools. And also for me to have the tools of like, oh no, for her, that comfort and security comes from her just being able to talk it out loud and not have a solution.
Yeah.
She's not looking for a fix. Well, immature me was frustrated with that. Mature me now is like, oh, that's
what you do.
That's how feminine energy works, bro.
Well, no, but really, that's relationships with almost every single individual, right? You know what I mean? It's like a lot of people just want to be heard, and so when you give people an ear, especially when people aren't very good listeners for the most part, or they're too busy giving their shit to somebody else. When you give them that space, they just think you're the most miraculous person ever, and you're like, hey man, I'm just here to just give you an ear for a moment. That's all I'm doing. It's not, it's not hard, but I think we just tend to talk about ourselves a lot.
It's tougher to be patient. I mean, it is like well, you're in the podcast space. I'm sure you get people in. This has been uniquely easy to ramble, I'll say.
Like you're not good at rambling usually, or what do you mean?
Just this is only the second podcast that I've been on. I booked 2 of them the week you called me out, and I was curious to see how comfortable it felt once we.
Did you already do the other one?
Yeah, I already knocked that one out.
Is this one better?
Yeah, dude, you're well lit up. The first one was no video.
Oh,
so it was just we were just audio.
No
casting
pizza
over
probably
something.
either.
And no pizza either.
And no Lone Star.
I didn't put nothing on the wall. Good buddies. I mean, it is cool to be around. That's one thing I will say. Being funny has afforded me so many cool friends over the years that was a lot of what comedy was about. It was like I need an excuse to be in the room with cool people. Comedy lets you do that. Yeah. Like you can be around.
Well, you found your people. Yeah.
And Austin's great for that too. There's a lot of like help. I mean, again, you're a personal trainer as well. My wife and I are personal trainers. Guess how many cool fit people there were in Ohio? It was just a tougher thing to find. Where here, it's just they're everywhere.
Even when I've had to go places for like fitness type stuff, like God bless, like I've made some good friends doing fitness type stuff, but most of those people aren't cool. Like all they want to do is talk about fitness, and like. I get no, but maybe it's just the group of company because like I would go and talk about comedy for hours. So maybe it's just like I just don't want to talk about fitness,
Some stuff I've found is just all right.
Yeah, that's about it.
And when people they have it, that's just all right. That's a 4-hour friend. No big deal. Not a 4-day friend, but a 4-hour friend. If they want to talk, fitness, I got a buddy that's a real monster, and. Again, we'll talk fitness, but it's got its shelf life. At some point, pick up heavy weights, put them down.
Well, man, I always ask people to give me a hug. You mind giving me a hug?
Dude.
Yeah, slip out, man.
Dude,
thank you so much.
Great to meet you.
Yeah,
in this form. Dude.
Thank you. It was great.